Hey everybody, my name is Matt and I'm the program manager at the Citizens Utility Board, or CUB. And today we're going to be discussing ways that you can reduce on both your gas and electricity bills. So CUB, or the Citizens Utility Board, is a nonprofit organization that fights the utility companies here in Illinois. Essentially, whenever the utilities attempt to raise their rates or pass some legislation that's not consumer friendly, we go after them on behalf of the ratepayers throughout Illinois. Our primary MO is helping folks out. So we do have this hotline that you can call Monday through Friday, 9 to 4, 1-800-669-5556. We have some awesome folks staffing that line that can answer any questions you have about your electricity and gas bills. We also have this website, citizensutilityboard.org, that has a ton of resources and fact sheets and blog posts about all things electricity and gas and ways that you can save and some of the cool programs you can take advantage of. So definitely want to encourage folks to go to that website. And then I'm a part of the outreach team, the grassroots arm of CUB. We spend a lot of time out in the field, both virtual and in person, doing events like this one. So you can go to our website and check out our calendar tab to see if we'll be in your neighborhood anytime soon. We'd love to hang out with you in person or at another virtual event like this one. And then lastly, we advocate for affordable and sustainable energy policies here in Illinois. We think there's this really cool intersection that exists between affordability and sustainability, where folks can reduce their carbon footprint and save money through cool clean energy programs like solar and building electrification, where you can not only reduce your carbon impact, but you can also save some money while doing it. We think that's really neat. So to get us started here, we'll jump into electricity. And we'll look at a ComEd bill. This bill is slightly dated. This is from 2020, but the information should still be good today. And I'm just going to show you some of the things that I look at when I'm looking at a bill out in the field. And one of the first places that I look is this total usage chart. This shows us what we're using month to month. And most importantly, we can look what we're using in the current month. So in this case, it's October of 2020. And then we can compare that to, for example, October of 2019, because with these 2 months, you should see pretty similar usage, but if you see a jump or a decrease in electricity, that can be a cause for concern. And in this case, this consumer did see a pretty big jump. They went from 52 kilowatt hours in October of 2019, and that jumped up to 201 in October of 2020. So if you look to the right here on the average daily use chart, this lets us do some further investigation. It shows us our average kilowatt hour usage day to day. And then it also shows us how much we're up or down from the previous year. And if you see a number like this, for example, this consumer is up 272% from last year, that is a big red flag. In this case, this consumer just moved in October of 2019. So that kind of explains why they saw this jump in usage. But I like to use this bill as an example because you can see what it would look like if you were to have a big difference. And if you look at your bill and you see similar numbers or similar increase, that is a big red flag. And in some cases, that could just be explained by you had your grandkids in your house or your kids were back from college. Or it could have been a transition month like April or May or October and November, where we see some weird weather patterns here in Northern Illinois. So you could see a colder or warmer month than you would typically see that can drive that usage up, which looking over here again on the right where my cursor is, you can see what the average temperature was for that month. And then if you look down, you can see it has the last year on the bottom right here, and it also has in the top the average temperature. So you can compare those temperature numbers. So looking at the bottom here, you have the current charges summary, which is a breakdown of where all of your money is going on the bill, which if you flip to the back here, this is a more elaborate breakdown of what is going on in your bill. And ultimately, it's broken down into those three parts: supply, delivery, taxes, and fees. And this looks really crazy, but we're going to try to make sense of this. And we'll start here at the bottom on taxes and fees. Taxes and fees, there's not a ton that you can do on this part of your bill. If you do reduce your usage, you can see some reductions on taxes and fees because most of these are based on how much you're using, which is this, in this case, this 201 kWh or kilowatt hours multiplied by that fixed rate. So if you were to reduce how much you use, that would drive down the cost a little bit. But past that, there's not a ton that you can do. Deliveries in the same boat. If you live in Northern Illinois, chances are you're going to have ComEd as your utility provider. And the delivery section is where you pay for the energy getting from point A to point B, where point A is generation, point B is your home. Not a ton you can do here either. You can reduce usage again, similarly to taxes and fees, which can drive down some of these fees a little bit. But past that, you're going to be stuck with ComEd most of the time if you are in Northern Illinois. That leaves us With the supply section, which the supply section probably has the biggest impact on our bills. This is where you pay for what you actually use. Generally, for most folks, this is going to be the largest piece of the bill. And this is also where you can have different companies on your bill. And in this case, this consumer does have another company. You can see it has supply and then a hyphen and it says Energy Plus Holdings LLC. That means they have a different company other than ComEd that's providing or supplying their energy. These companies are pretty notorious. Generally, they go around door to door. You'll see them at the movie theaters or like a hardware store trying to get you to sign up, promising savings, things like that. And in general, what we find, to be frank, is that oftentimes what they're offering is not as good as the default utility, which is ComEd. And in this case, we can actually see that on this bill. So Energy Plus Holdings, if you look down here, the commodity charge, just 201 kWh, kilowatt hours, how much this consumer is using, the at sign, which is multiplied by their rate. So this consumer is paying 15.9 cents per kilowatt hour, which sounds arbitrary if you don't know what the price to compare is. But fortunately, on the ComEd bill, if you look under updates and then under ComEd, you can see the price to compare. And this shows what the default rate is at that time. And again, this is a little bit older of a bill, but at the time, ComEd was charging about 7 cents per kilowatt hour, and this consumer was being charged 16 cents per kilowatt hour, so more than double. So their supply would have been closer to like $14 or $15 if they had been with ComEd, because they're being charged so much through this company. So if you look at your bill and you see that you have an alternative supplier and you look at what they're charging you and you go to the price to compare, see what ComEd's rate is, you do the math. If you're spending more with that supplier, there's no benefit to being with that supplier outside of cost savings. So if you are losing money with that supplier, we strongly recommend that you try to cancel that contract. And it's pretty straightforward. The way you would do that is you go back to the front part of the bill, you look at this blue box here, which shows us who the supplier is. And this is probably the easiest place to identify if you do have a supplier. If you're with ComEd, it'll say ComEd provides your energy. And if you're with a supplier, it'll say, fill in the blank supplier provides your energy. In this case, it's Energy Plus Holdings. And then it also has their telephone number. So in order to cancel the contract, you just need to call the supplier, let them know that you'd like to cancel that contract. You do not need to contact ComEd. The supplier can just process it all on their own. Generally, it takes a month or two, a billing cycle or two for the switch to be processed. And then you should also get a letter from ComEd notifying you of the switch. And again, it's like really similar to calling a cable company. They're going to try to get you to stay and they're going to offer you, some new deals and contracts. But generally, the rule of thumb is that, you're being ripped off once, don't fall for it again. Just go back to ComEd. It's generally your safer bet. So ComEd's rate changes 2 times a year. So we showed the price to compare here, but this is an older bill. So if you were to look at your price to compare in your bills right now, you would see 6.55 cents per kilowatt hour. It changes 2 times a year, once in October and once in June, just to reflect like different market changes. And in some cases, municipalities across Illinois have the ability to negotiate what we call municipal aggregations. This is where a community contracts with one of those suppliers to attempt to offer a deal to their residents. And it is an opt-out program, not an opt-in program. You can figure out if your community has one at plugin.illinois.gov. There's a list of all the communities with the contracts listed in that spreadsheet. And I know this is in Winnebago County and Boone County, so I tried to get a few different municipalities that this library covers. And I found Rockford, Loves Park, and Roscoe were the 3. But if you're in a community outside of that, again, you can just go to plugin.illinois.gov to see if you have an municipal aggregation. In this case, all 3 of these communities do have a contract with a company called MC Squared. And unfortunately, it's currently at 7.79 cents until September of 2026. So at this point in time, if you're in one of these communities, you most likely have MC Squared on your bill and you are paying more than what ComEd is currently offering. Do what you will with that information. Generally, I don't think you should pay more for your electricity if you don't need to. So in order to leave that contract, if you decided to do that, you just call the company, which again, you'd find on the current charges summary, and you could let them know you want to cancel. But at the end of the day, regardless if it's a municipal aggregation or just a standard contract with one of these suppliers, the most important thing to do is if you see one of these companies on your bill, look at how much they're charging you, compare it to ComEd's price to compare. And if you're losing money leave the contract. If you're saving money, stick around and just make sure you continue to save money on that contract. All right, so moving on to gas, we're going to look at a Nicor bill today because we are in Northern Illinois. Chances are, if you live in Northern Illinois, outside of Chicago, you'll have a Nicor bill. You are virtually an expert now. After knowing what happens on an electricity bill, a lot of those concepts carry over to our gas bills. It just looks a little bit different. So on our gas bill, we have very similar kind of categories. We have delivery, natural gas costs, which is synonymous with supply, and then taxes and fees. And again, taxes and fees and delivery charges, there's not a ton you can do past reducing your energy usage through energy efficiency to save a little bit of money. But natural gas cost or the supply is a little bit different on gas. So unlike electricity, which electricity again changes 2 times a year, the default rate, the natural gas rate changes once every month. So that's why you see these 2 charges under natural gas costs, one for December and one for January. Most of the time, our billing cycles start 1 month and then in another. In this case, they had a little bit in December, then it carried over to January. And because the rates can be different month to month, they have these 2 line items separated by the month. And in this case, the rate was the same. It was 29 cents. You can see the therms multiplied by that rate on both of the line items here. It stayed the same. Generally, what we see with gas rates is they stay pretty consistent. The fluctuations are within a couple pennies of each other in most accounts, so you don't see a really big difference. Now, if you look to the right here, I know I have a lot going on this screen, but let's focus on the monthly energy profile with the circle. Of course, this has the monthly therm use, which is the chart that shows us what we're using month to month. And this is important, just like the one on electricity is, where you can compare the various months usage, and you want to compare, for example, this current, in this case, January compared to the previous year's January, which you can't see because this person also moved in March, so they didn't have any usage for January of 2020. But if you look at your bill, that's what you want to look at, is the current month compared to the previous year's month, and making sure that the usage is in line with each other. There's also a price to compare, an average temperature chart. It's a little bit different on here. It's just right under the monthly therm use chart. You have the average temperature, which is all these figures at the very top. And then just below that, you have natural gas costs. So this is the price to compare. And you can see it changes month to month. But again, it's not a very big change. It goes from like 26 to 29 cents throughout this year, which this was 2020. So this is important because you can have alternative suppliers in the gas market. And that's why I have those yellow arrows there. If you ever see these 2 boxes, a message for you and monthly energy profile, separate, and you see some line items fill in between there, that means you have additional products and services, which ultimately means that you have an alternative supplier, which I have an example here, this bill, and you can see that those 2 boxes have separated, and then in between them has filled total additional products and services. There's a lot of like kind of gobbledygook there, but if you look at the middle line item, that shows how much they're using, and it multiplies by the fixed rate that the supplier is offering, which in this case, they have Illinois Energy, and they're offering 43.9 cents, which again, is arbitrary if you don't know the price to compare. But fortunately for us, we have the price to compare in the bottom part of the bill. You can look at this line item here. In the most recent month, which is March, it was 26 cents per therm at that time. However, this consumer is paying about 44 cents. Which is a pretty big jump, almost double. So that would have taken this $60 that they owed the supplier on their bill, and it would have cut it about in half back to 30, which that starts to add up. So just like electricity, if you see that you have an alternative supplier on your bill, do the math, make sure you're saving. If you're not, you need to call that company and cancel that contract so you can go back to Nicor. With gas, it works just the same as electricity. You call, it takes a billing cycle or 2 to go back. You don't need to contact Nicor. So right now, the Nicor rate is about 32 cents per therm. And again, that changes month to month. And I have this crazy looking chart here, but this shows us each price, or the price to compare for each month going back to 2013. And you can see, we'll just look at 2024 here, the rate didn't change much. From 34 to 39 to 37 to 34 to 36 to 32 to 28. So not significant changes. So a lot of times when suppliers are trying to offer contracts, they're saying, oh, you know, with Nicor, the rate changes month to month. You want to get on a more consistent rate. But really, that's just smoke and mirrors. They're just trying to put you on a higher rate that's fixed versus paying these kind of small fluctuations. So buyer beware with these alternative suppliers. In general, we think it's better to try to reduce usage in the home to save some money or take advantage of some of the programs that we have here in Illinois. And I'll start with financial assistance. This isn't available to everybody. This is available to folks who qualify, but I think it's really important to mention because times are tough right now. And there are some really good kind of buckets of money or programs that can help reduce energy burden or the cost of our bills during the winter and summertime. So the first program I want to mention is the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP. This is a financial grant for both your gas and electric bill. The amount changes based on what your income is. And in order to qualify, you do need to be 200% of the federal poverty level, which right now is about $42,000 for a household of two. And this changes based on how many folks are in the home. But in order to apply for this program or to see if you qualify, you need to contact the Rockford Human Services Department at 844-710-6919. This changes based on the county. So if you're not in Winnebago County, you're in Boone County, for example, you would need to contact your county to see who administers the LIHEAP program. But in this case, I just picked Winnebago because there's a lot of text on this screen. Doesn't have much room. But again, in order to see if you qualify or to see what the process is, you just need to reach out to your community action agency. In this case, it's the Rockford Human Services Department. Next, we have the gas sharing program. We have Share the Warmth for People's Gas, which is Chicago, but we also have the gas sharing program for Nicor. And this is for eligible customers, which is 300% of the federal poverty level for Nicor. You can get $150 on your bill if you're a senior or a veteran. This changes year to year based on availability of funds. And this year, right now, it's just reserved for seniors or veterans. But if you fall into that category, you can visit your local Salvation Army in person to see if you qualify and to try to get those funds onto your bill. And then lastly, we have the Illinois Home Weatherization Assistance Program, or IWAP for short. Eligible customers can receive free appliances and services up to $16,000 that help improve your efficiency and just reduce your overall energy burden. The services include air sealing, attic and wall insulation, HVAC repair and replacement, water heater repair replacement, lighting and refrigerator replacement, and then lastly, ventilation and moisture control measures, as well as some other health and safety measures, things like looking for mold or asbestos. So some really good programs out there. In order to get the IWAP program, that would also be through the Rockford Human Services Department or your community action agency, where again, Nicor is being administered through, the gas sharing program is being administered through the local Salvation Army. So the next most important thing in my mind is energy efficiency. This is the first step to reducing energy in our the cost of energy on our bills, or just how much we use, which ultimately impacts the cost of our bills. We have a mantra in the Cub office. It's that the cheapest and cleanest energy is the energy you don't use. And that doesn't mean live by candlelight. That just means using energy more efficiently. We find that every dollar that you spend on efficiency ends up saving you $3 in energy costs. So it's a really good investment, especially when most of the things that you can do in your own home are no to low cost. So what can you do right now? It's wintertime. Most importantly, you can weatherize. I think that's probably the most bang for your buck. Caulking floorboards, weather stripping doors and windows, making sure that there's no leakage can really make sure that your furnace and your air conditioning unit are working to the best of their ability and aren't over generating cooling or heating for your home. Energy efficient lighting is really important. About 10 to 15% of our bills comes from lighting. So if you're still using those old incandescent light bulbs, you can reduce your usage by switching over to LEDs by about 80%, because LEDs are about 80% more efficient than the standard incandescent bulbs. You can also utilize your programmable thermostat. I know it's really challenging with some of those thermostats because they can kind of be janky and like hard to navigate. But if you can figure out how to set it up, setting your thermostat to be up or down based on the season when you're away from the home, if you're going to work every day, for example, can have a pretty significant impact on your utility bill. And at the end of the day, just using the internet, Google, to look at DIY or do it yourself tips and tricks. YouTube is a really great resource for this, to look at ways that you can weatherize and improve the efficiency of your home. If you've already done all of this stuff, there are some good programs that can also help you reduce energy costs through your utilities. For example, we have a demand response program, which I'll get to. There's two. There's hourly pricing and peak time savings. And there's also the home energy assessment. So hourly pricing is a program through ComEd that changes how you pay for electricity. So I took this directly from the hourly pricing website on ComEd's website, hourlypricing.comed.com. This is from October, but I think it shows a good example of what happens when you're on hourly pricing, because again, changes how you pay. And instead of paying that fixed rate through ComEd, you would pay the hour to hour rate for electricity, because electricity, the price changes hour to hour based on demand. And in this case, you can see, for example, at times when people aren't really using, like early morning, prices are pretty low. They're like sub 2 cents per kilowatt hour. But then around 4 to like 8 p.m., we start to see a jump. So it went from like what, at 5 o'clock, it was about 4 cents per kilowatt hour. And then at 7, it jumped almost to 12. The idea behind this program is that if you sign up, if you're to use big ticket appliances, things like washing your clothes or charging an electric vehicle, and if you were to do it when the price spikes, you would take a pretty big hit. However, if you were able to move your usage outside of those peak windows, for example, just waiting until 8 or 9 p.m. to charge your electric vehicle, you can save quite a bit of money. Now, this is what the typical day looks like, but this is October 14th. You look at October 13th, just a day before, you could see the prices were pretty dang low. They were all almost sub 2 cents. And in some cases, they even went into the negatives, meaning that if you were to charge your electric vehicle or do the laundry at 5 p.m. this day, you would have ended up racking up a credit versus actually using energy, which is pretty neat. So the overall idea of this program is that you would just monitor what the prices are and try to drive your usage outside of these peaks so you can end up saving money. Folks can end up saving quite a bit. I think on average, it's about 10 to 15% folks save when they sign up for hourly pricing. There's another program called, oh, sorry, this is actually a screenshot from the hourly pricing program, where they show you what you saved or potentially lost on the program. They send you kind of like a wrap-up email every month. And in this case, this was actually taken from me a few years ago. I ended up saving about $50 at the time. I'd been on it for 5 months, which is about 28.9% savings. As you can see on the bottom part of this email here, it shows you what your bill would have been if you were on their fixed pricing, and then what I paid on hourly pricing, and they gave me a general breakdown. So it's a good way to know if you do sign up for the program, to know if you're actually saving money or losing money, because it can be there can be situations where you end up losing money on the program if you're not moving your usage outside of those windows. But if you are moving it outside of those windows, you can save a decent amount. Next, we have the Peak Time Savings Program, which is kind of a sister program to hourly pricing. It's the all carrot, no stick version of the program. The same idea exists for peak time savings that exist for hourly pricing, where we see these spikes on the grid. And ideally, we want to move usage outside of those, because over time that will move energy prices down. So we can convince people to use outside of those peak times. This does that. This would kind of be a stripped down version of hourly pricing, where whenever they have an event where we see some higher usage or expect some higher usage on like really hot summer months, or maybe something's happening in the industrial corridor, they'll reach out and they'll say, hey, Ms. Smith, from 1 to 3 p.m., use less than you typically do during that time. And if you do, you get approximately $1 per kilowatt hour you saved. And if you don't, you're not able to reduce usage, nothing happens. Again, all carrot, no stick. So it's a really good way to get a couple bucks back. It's not going to make or break your bill. Generally, it's just a few bucks, but it's a good way to know when there are some peaks on the grid, when we're relying heavily on what we call peaker plants, which are really dirty fossil fuel power plants. You can move your usage outside of those peaks and try to move them to the valley to save a little bit of money. And you can do hourly pricing and peak time savings at the same time, which is really neat. So if you're considering hourly pricing, I think peak time savings is like the no-brainer version, whether you're going with hourly pricing or not. There's also the home energy savings program, the home energy assessment program, excuse me, which it kind of has two versions to it. It recently changed, but this is a way that you can get some really good energy efficient appliances for free. There's a version of the program that's available to folks who are 80% AMI or under, which in Winnebago County is about $51,000 for a household of two. And if you're in that category, you can schedule an in-home or virtual assessment where they can come in and identify ways to save, and they can give you some of these free products, things like low flow shower heads, LED light bulbs, faucet aerators, programmable thermostats, the works, all for free. And then there's some additional work that could be done, assuming that you qualify. Folks who are over that 80% area median income number would need to complete a self-assessment. So you do it online, basically fill out a survey, and they identify some of these products that would be best fit for your house, and they would send you those products. So in order to see if you qualify for this, for the 80% AMI version, or if you want to just do the self-assessment, you can call them at 855-433-2700. This is a joint program through ComEd and NICOR, so you can also go online to see how you can get plugged into this. There are also some really good rebates available through the utilities. ComEd and Ameren both have really good rebates available to help reduce the cost of some of the energy efficient appliances you might be adding to your home. So in this case, we have ComEd, which you can just go to this link here and see what kind of rebates are available in your area. If you're planning on doing some kind of energy efficiency work or replacing an appliance, this is a good place to start because there might be some money on the table to help you reduce the initial burden of that appliance cost. So oftentimes we get asked about solar because, when you're driving around Illinois now, you start to see more and more houses have solar. And that's because the incentives right now for solar energy are so great. Just to give a general breakdown, there is a lot of money on the table from both the federal and state government. So the federal government has an incentive of 30% in the form of a tax credit. You would deduct that percentage of your project costs from your federal taxes. And this is locked in until 2033, I believe. So this is going to be around for a while. On top of that, you have the state incentive or the Solar Renewable Energy Credit, SREC, which can cover 20 to 30% of the total cost of your solar installation. And this is you selling back the environmental benefit of the solar system on your home, which is based on how much electricity your system is expected to produce over 15 years, which is pretty neat. And again, that can cover 20 to 30%. And when you couple the federal and state incentives together, that's anywhere from 50 to 60% of the total cost of your solar installation, which is really neat. So it can help offset that cost pretty significantly. And then lastly, there's some utility incentives. So you can receive bill credits on the supply side of your bill for the energy that your system's producing. So the way that the solar panels would work is that they generate electricity, the sun hits them, that electricity first runs through the home, and then anything that your appliances don't use is sent out into the grid. And then you are credited back on your bill for that energy being put on your grid, which helps reduce the overall bill impact, which is pretty neat. So if you're somebody who can't put solar on your home, whether it's just you don't want to, or you have shading on your rooftop, or maybe you're a renter, or you own a condo and you don't have roof rights, there's a really neat program called Community Solar, who's designed for folks who can't put solar on their homes. The way this would work is you would subscribe to a community solar project or farm that's built somewhere in your utility territory. So if you're a ComEd customer, you need to sign up for a community solar farm that's in ComEd territory. The reverse is true for folks who live downstate and are on Ameren. Once you're signed up, you have a subscription that's based on your average electricity usage. And each month that your subscription produces electricity, your community solar company is going to report that number of kilowatt hours or energy produced to your utility, and then you receive those credits on your bill. Right now, the current offerings range anywhere from 10 to 20% guaranteed savings on your supply portion of your bill. This is a super neat program. Even if you don't necessarily care about the environmental benefit of solar, it's just good from a cost saving perspective. It's just a guaranteed 10 or 20% reduction on a piece of your bill. So what does this look like on your bill? We have like kind of a back of the napkin breakdown here. The purple column is what your bill looks like without community solar, whereas the yellow column is what it looks like with community solar. So starting with the purple, without community solar, we have the standard stuff: supply, delivery, taxes, and fees, which totaled this consumer's bill out to $109. This is without community solar. But when you look with community solar, see that they have the same kind of breakdown. They're using 800 kilowatt hours, but then they have a community solar subscription for about 714 kilowatt hours. So because of the community solar subscription, those 714 kilowatt hours are removed from their bill. As you can see here, it's in the financial credit. So they put $50 on the bill, removing that, put the supply from $56 to $6. And then that 714 kilowatt hours or $50 worth of energy is then sent to the community solar provider at the baked in discount. So it's 20% in this case, which was $10 off. That was just based on a 7 cent per kilowatt hour calculation at the time. which did knock down those $50 worth of energy credits down to 40. So the way it works is that whatever ComEd's current rate is at the time, depending on the contract that you signed with the community solar developer, you'll pay, in this case, 20% of that constantly, regardless of what it is, or 10% if you get a lower contract. But that's the way it works. They just remove those credits from your bill. They bill you separately with the discount baked in. You could save some good money without having to do anything. And we have a really good resource on our website, solarinthecommunity.com. That'll just link you right to CUB's resource on Community Solar, where we have a list of all of the current offerings. So if you're interested in checking out what the current offerings are and how this works in more detail, you can go to that piece of our website to learn more. And lastly, we have an income qualified solar program called Illinois Solar for All here in Illinois. And it's a really neat program. There are a couple different versions of this program. They have a community solar offering. They have residential solar where you put the rooftop panels on your home. And then they also have solar for nonprofits and public facilities. And if you qualify, the way that this works and the way that it's kind of like spelled out in the legislation is that it's no money down and a guaranteed 50% savings. For example, if you were to do community solar through Illinois Solar for All, that 20% figure that we saw here would instead be 50%. So it's pretty significant. If you think you qualify, which you would need to be 80% area median income, to give an example for Winnebago County, that'd be about just less than $52,000 for a family of two. If you qualify, it's worth going to IllinoisSFA.com. That's the state's website that kind of has all the details about this program. Worth looking there to see if you can get plugged in, because there's some really significant cost savings that can be realized from this program. So that about wraps up my presentation. I always like to do a shameless volunteer team plug. I am the volunteer coordinator at the Citizens Utility Board, and we have a really great team of folks who are always helping us out in the field and behind the scenes. So if this stuff got you jazzed and you're interested in kind of moving the needle forward here in Illinois, you can always reach out to me to get involved, which here is my info. Matt Harvey. I need to change my title. It has recently changed, but this is my email here, mharvey@citizensutilityboard.org. If you have any questions about anything that you saw during this presentation or are interested in getting more involved at CUB, you can always shoot us an email. And then you can also call our hotline. Again, it's open Monday through Friday, 9 to 4, and that's that 800-669-5556 number. I appreciate your time. And again, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.